Today's famous person is a woman hardly anyone has ever heard of. Her name was Vivian Marburn, and she worked as a court stenographer in the early 20th century. Vivian was known as one of the most accurate and speedy court stenographers of her day. Her obituary said that she could type up to 270 words per minute, which was almost unheard of in her time. When you consider that most people speak at about 150 words per minute, you can see why Vivian's services were so greatly valued by the courts. Well, there was one particular trial that was in all the newspapers because it was so scandalous. It involved a young boy who had been accused of killing and eating his own grandmother. The prosecutor was pushing for the death penalty, even though the accused was a minor. Vivian understood that a boy's life was on the line, and she made sure to type every word in the trial exactly as she heard it. At one point, the prosecutor asked Vivian to reread something the boy had said during cross-examination. Vivian calmly looked through her notes and carefully read back what the boy had said. Grandma was furious with me.
Her face was all red and she wouldn't stop yelling. I tried to calm her down and tell her it would be okay, but the devil had possessed her and she kept screaming and cussing and telling me I would go to hell for my sins. So I picked up my knife and smiled and said, "Come on, let's eat, Grandma." Well, she froze and turned white as a ghost. She looked at me with the fear of God in her eyes and collapsed in front of me, never taking her eyes off the knife. Well, the prosecutor exploded, claiming that this proved beyond any reasonable doubt that the boy was guilty of murder and abuse of a corpse. He rested his case and dramatically slammed his fist on the table, drawing a stern admonishment from the judge. Well, thank goodness Vivian wasn't having any of it. She looked at the judge and explained that the hot-tempered attorney had misheard what she read from the stenography machine and that she would like to reread it. The courtroom was deathly quiet. People were in shock. It was unheard of for a woman in Vivian's position to speak up with such boldness, especially to a high-powered prosecutor who had tried some of the most infamous criminals in our nation's history. But the wise judge nodded for Vivian to continue. In her smooth, clear voice, Vivian said, "May it please the court, these are the defendant's precise words." So I picked up my knife and smiled and said, "Come on, let's eat, Grandma." Your Honor, there is a comma after the word eat. The boy was not threatening to eat his grandmother. He was encouraging her to sit down for a meal so they could discuss things calmly. She was furious at him for sneaking dessert before lunch, and he was trying to reassure her that he still had a healthy appetite and would eat everything she had prepared. As you've heard during these proceedings, the old woman suffered from delusions and hallucinations. She thought the boy was making a threat rather than a peace offering. Her heart gave out and she died of fear. Yes, the boy's fingerprints were naturally found on the knife, but he did not kill the woman. In fact, he ran out to get the police, but in his haste, didn't fully close the door. A wandering pack of coyotes smelled the food on the stove and let themselves into the small house. They saw the old woman on the floor and tragically did what animals do in those situations. When the constable arrived, he drew the wrong conclusions and arrested the boy on false pretense, and now this young lad is being threatened with the electric chair for a crime he did not commit. Everyone nervously looked at the judge. The judge looked sternly at the prosecutor, letting him know this would be handled behind closed doors and would not go well for the man. The judge suddenly hammered his gavel twice and dismissed the case. He awarded the innocent boy $350 for emotional distress, which at that time was more money than some people made in a year. The courtroom erupted with cheers and applause. The boy was overwhelmed with emotion and ran out of the courtroom, forgetting to collect his money. The court bailiff chased after the boy to give him his reward. The prosecutor resigned in shame, unable to deal with the fact that he'd lost the highest profile case of his career because of a simple comma. Vivian went on to many more years of court stenography. When she retired at the ripe old age of 67, which was quite old in those days, she started the Vivian Marburn School of Stenography. Because of her reputation, the school flourished and opened many branches around the country. Vivian became very wealthy, but it never got to her head. She gave away more than 95% of her money to the needy and less fortunate, and also gave scholarships to young women who wanted a steady job as a court stenographer. There's a monument of Vivian in Billings, Montana, where she was born, and it would be great if you guys get a chance to visit it one day and pay your respects. Well, that's our story for today, kids. Always remember to use proper punctuation. The consequences might be a lot bigger than you can possibly realize.